All right, so once you've sewed all of your circles, so if you recall, we started out with 9-inch circles, 9-inch batting, and after you sew that 1/4 inch seam allowance going all the way around, if your seam allowance was perfect, you should have an 8.5-inch circle finished. So what you're gonna need is a square template that fits perfectly inside that circle so that all 4 corners fit in there, so that no 4 corners are sticking out of that circle. And so the size that you need for that is a 6-inch square. Now, if after you've sewn all of your circles and you cut your 6-inch square and you're finding that, oh no, I have some corners that are popping out of that circle, that's okay. It's just what you can do to account for any seam allowance discrepancies, which I happen to have, happens all the time, is just to take your square and just trim off 1/8 inch from the square. So you trim it here and here to give you a 5 7/8 inch square template. So what I would suggest doing is to first sew all your circles, cut your 6-inch square, and then if you're finding that you have corners popping out, then just trim off 1/8 inch as needed. You might need to trim off a little bit more, just as long as you use the same, just as long as it's consistent. So you want to either use a 6-inch ruler for all of your circles or a 5 7/8 inch square for all of your circles. And the 5 7/8 inch squares to account for any seam allowance discrepancies. And so what I used here for my square is, this is just gridded plastic template paper. I love using this stuff. This is the brand that I used. I found this at my local arts and crafts store in the quilting section, and this brand is called Easy Quilting. But it's great because it's really easy to cut because of that grid. So, first I cut the 6-inch square, and then I found out that I needed to shave off 1/8 inch to account for my seam allowance discrepancy. And so it was really easy to just look at the line here and then just trim that off from each side, or from the 2 sides here of my square. But you don't have to use this gridded template plastic paper. It's just really easy. I like to use it. You can also just use cardboard and measure out, your 6-inch square or 5 7/8 inch square on your cutting mat. So whatever works best.